Hi everyone, welcome back to The Vegan Atheist and the premiere episode of Stupid Hindu Comments. This video series deconstructs a stupid comment or argument made by a Hindu on the internet. I've examined and critiqued many silly things theists have said in defense of their beliefs, and I'm continually amazed with the level of their irrationality. Stupid defenses for one's religious perspectives are not reserved for stupid people, as is the case with this week's focus on Lakhani, a theoretical physicist and a speaker on spiritual humanism. Lakhani is far from an uneducated buffoon, but his arguments for why a god allows suffering in the world is just pathetically weak.
You see, this issue of suffering and why should we suffer if there's a God behind it continues to bother philosophers and theologians, and they've not really come up with a proper answer. They can't. If they say this God is almighty and good, then why should he make us go through this process of evolution where we struggle and go through all this process of paying a tax for our body? That's what suffering is.
The problem of evil is the central argument under discussion in this video. For those who are unfamiliar with it, the argument from evil refers to the question of how can a theist who believes in an all-good, all-knowing, and all-powerful God explain the existence of suffering and evil? Why would a loving God capable of anything allow his special creation to suffer needlessly from things out of their control? This argument is not meant to convince a theist that a God does not exist. That's impossible in any regard. It's meant rather to expose the impossibility of a loving God existing. A cruel or callous God could very well exist, but almost no one argues for such a being. A loving God who permits gratuitous suffering is a contradiction and needs to be seriously considered.
The answer is this. If you think of God like a personality, like a person saying, hello, I'm going to set you off, then we are in trouble. If you think of God as a principle, not a person you can blame, but as a principle that's unfolding in this unusual manner or this weird manner, then you are reasonably safe because you can't hold him to task.
God as a principle, not as a personal being? What utter nonsense is this? A principle, as defined by dictionary.com, is either an accepted rule of action, a fundamental law from which others are derived, a fundamental doctrine, or a guiding sense of the requirements and obligations of right conduct. How can something that is some combination of these accepted definitions be the cause of the cosmos? A principle is a conceptual construct of the human mind, not a thing that exists in the universe. Calling a god a principle is nothing more than a deipity, which is a statement that is apparently profound, but actually asserts a triviality on one level and something meaningless on another.
In the example I've given, just show you. You see, we know that the reason why we are able to live on this earth is because force of gravity holds us down. Otherwise we'll float away into sky, in the space. And you can't grow plants, you can't eat, you can't live at all. So we may decide that, look, we don't believe in God and religion and all that, but we believe in gravity. So we are now going to say, this is called the God of gravity, Lord Gravity. And we build a temple, of course, of Lord of Gravity because holding us down, allowing us to survive. Marvelous idea, isn't it? Then you take your friend for a walk and near a mountainous area, and a huge piece of rocks comes rolling down the hill and kills your friend. So you'll immediately put up your hand and say, what happened? You run to the temple of gravity and say, oh Lord Gravity, what have you done? And Lord Gravity will just shrug his shoulder. This is how the cookie crumbles. The thing that was holding you down is the other thing that's going to bring the rock down on your face. You can't have it both ways. So you see, when you think of God like a principle, you can't blame him.
God of gravity, Lord Gravity. We've hit bedrock. Okay, so let's entertain this hypothetical scenario in which people worship a god of gravity. I can't believe I'm doing this. Anyways, so we have an incident where your buddy gets killed by a falling rock, and we are told by our Hindu friend here that we can't rationally blame gravity. This example falls apart on a number of fronts. 1. Lakhani, by using gravity as an example, is trying to suggest the absurdity of blaming a non-personal force in nature for our stoned friend's fate. But then Jay has Lord Gravity shrugging his shoulders and proclaiming, this is how the cookie crumbles. The whole point of this absurd scenario was to illustrate that gravity is not a personal being who is to blame for the man's death. But then he forgets that and makes him a being with shoulders, a voice, and a douche who quotes cheesy movie lines from the early 2000s. Since this Lord Gravity is a personal being and he is in control of what falls, he is directly responsible for the man's death. 2. Okay, so let's give Lakhani the benefit of the doubt and ignore the slip-up of Lord Gravity actually being a personal being. Let's take his scenario to its logical conclusion. Alright, so let's set the stage so we all can keep this story straight, because my grasp on it is slipping. We have silly people worshipping an impersonal, unconscious force of nature, gravity. These people don't realize that gravity is just a force of nature without any wants and desires. These people are, I take it, analogous to the typical theist in this world who believes in a personal God. J. Lakhani is thus suggesting that our real-world God is like gravity in this hypothetical universe of gravity worshippers. But that doesn't make any sense because gravity is not any more like a principle than a God is. Gravity is a natural phenomenon in which things with mass are attracted to each other. It has no creative powers, intelligence, thoughts, desires, emotions, or characteristics that would be necessary to give rise to a universe. Just like a principle, which it too has no creative powers, intelligence, thoughts, desires, emotions, or characteristics that could lead it to the creation of a universe. This is the problem with a DPD. It sounds profound unless you start to think about it for more than a second.
So the deeper idea of why there is this suffering, or why should you pay a tax for having a body, really when you analyze a physical suffering, suppose you put your finger in the fire and you go, ouch, you scream. It's not because you're an evil monster and law of karma is catching up with you. It is simply your own self-defense mechanism trying to warn you that if you want to continue to live in this body, then pull your finger out. Otherwise you burn your finger and your hand and you'll be in trouble. So when you get pangs of hunger, just as we had half an hour ago, we get pangs of hunger. It's not some evil monster. No, I want to survive. Then you better put some food in your stomach system. And the only way this body can signal to me is by being nasty, rough. Suppose the body gave me nice sweet feeling when I was hungry. I'll not eat. I'll just sit around and die. So it has to be sharp. It has to be painful for us to take action. So it is nothing but your self-defense mechanism trying to warn you, trying to make sure that you continue to survive in the body.
I can't believe this. Instead of actually addressing the problem of evil and the gratuitous suffering we find in the world, J. Lakhani goes on to explain why our tummies have an owie when we are hungry. Seriously? Everyone understands why we feel discomfort when hungry. It encourages us to keep eating so we keep living. The same reason why sex feels so good. A biological encouragement to keep procreating to ensure the survival of our species. The problem of evil is a much more profound argument against the notion of a good God existing. If the extent of human and animal suffering was a singed finger or an empty stomach, maybe Jay's explanation would suffice. But we don't live in such a world. Earth is home to a lot of suffering and death caused by avalanches, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, floods, tsunamis, blizzards, that thing, Cancrum auris infection, tapeworms, myitis, polio, cholera, Ebola, malaria, bubonic plague, Spanish flu, AIDS, cancer, and on and on and on. What's the point of all this suffering? We feel hungry in order to ensure we eat. What do we get from Cancrum auris infection besides a permanent rearrangement of our face and genitals? Jay's explanation for why there's suffering in the world is pathetically myopic and wholly inadequate.
So when you explain like this, that's very sensible. So it's not that you've done something bad or evil. As soon as you enter the body or live through the body, the only way you can continue to live with the body is to pay a price. And the price is that you will get these pangs of hunger that will keep you continue to live in the body. When you think like this, that's sensible. So it's not some external God who is kind of punishing me. It is simply because what is manifesting through the body is paying a price for it. There's a price to be paid, and that's why I call it tax for having a body. The only way to avoid the issue of suffering is to go from the idea of God as a personality to the idea of God as a principle, as Brahman. Then you are reasonably safe. Not that you answered everything, but you're reasonably safe.
J. Lakhani's arguments against the problem of evil is far from sensible. The typical theist apologist's response to the problem of evil is that God may have his reasons for permitting suffering that is beyond our capacity to comprehend. God allows for suffering to exist and at times intentionally dishes it out, but all for a greater unknown good. This too is wholly inadequate, as it suggests that God could not have achieved that unknown greater good without so much pain and distress, which would suggest that a God is not all-powerful or all-knowing, and thus not a God at all. If a God exists, it created the universe and the laws that guide it. He is to be held responsible to account for all the needless suffering within it. If, as I suspect, no gods exist, then death and suffering is an unfortunate part of living in a dynamic universe filled with countless possibilities for good and bad experiences. If you enjoyed this video, click the like button below. To ensure you don't miss out on future content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Keep up to date with what's up on my Facebook page and follow me on Twitter. All links can be found in the video description below or on the official Vegan Atheist website. Lastly, if you like the work I do and have a few bucks to spare, please consider becoming a patron of the channel by supporting my Patreon project. Thank you for your ongoing support, and as always, thank you for watching.